So this is the first time actually that after seeing the name of a case, I was actually excited to solve it because it has Facebook in it. And if you ask any subcontinent guy or girl, and we're from Bangladesh, that Facebook is something that is so heavily incorporated into our lives that we basically can't spend any minute without it. So when we don't have to use our phones for 2.5 hours solving the case, it's actually tough because we can't see what's happening in the rest of the world. But last week, I went to China, and there was no Facebook. So I had lots of plans. I would upload pictures, I would share everything with my friends and family, but I had nothing to do. And then someone introduced me to WeChat, and I realized that there is a new world out there that is not even close to what Facebook offers. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're from the University of Dhaka, and today we're here with the objective to ensure that both Tennessee and Facebook can build a sustainable business model to pave the way for a more bright future. Now, for Facebook, we feel that it has a global presence, but it needs to make certain changes to make sure that it remains the global leader that it currently is. At the same time, for Tennessee, we feel that it needs to prioritize. It's more than just a social media platform. It's much more than that. And it needs to prioritize and set its goals to ensure that it does not end up being just any other app. Moving on. Now, for the agenda of this presentation, we'll first of all walk you through the situation analysis and give you a comparison of the two companies, and then we will suggest individual strategies, followed by a critical analysis of our strategies to show which one is the best way to go for each company, followed by risk and mitigation, and then financial projections. Moving on. First of all, let's take a look at the analysis of the situation. For Facebook, now Facebook is a global company. It's present in most parts of the world except for China, obviously. Now, it has a staggering 3.2 billion average monthly users. At the same time, if it feels that a company is innovative and it might end up being its competitor, it just acquires it. For example, it has acquired Instagram. It also tried to acquire Snapchat. So, for its growth, Facebook focuses on acquisitions. However, it has a slow innovation rate. For example, for a new idea to come to practice, Facebook takes at least 1 year to get it into the market, which, if you compare with other Chinese competitors, is very, very slow and is a cause of concern. At the same time, another issue is the fact that for Facebook's revenues, 97% is ad revenues. So in the future, where the market is showing concern for Facebook as a privacy, in terms of privacy, focusing just on ad revenue could hamper its business in the long run. Now, if we take a look at what Facebook wants to do, it wants to connect people in ways they've never connected before. And so far, it is doing a good job. But if we consider the future, it might be a bit shaky. So where are the opportunities for Facebook in the future? First of all, it can develop a more integrated ecosystem. It currently has good social media presence, but it could incorporate new advances. For example, you can't order a cab from Facebook or Messenger. You can't order food from Facebook. But these are things that the market actually demands at this point from one particular app. At the same time, AR and VR in entertainment and videos, these are things that Facebook is working on, but it needs to push them out immediately before their competitors do. Same time, F-commerce, it's still a struggling area for Facebook. And chatbots is something we'll elaborate later on. Moving on to Tencent. Now, Tencent, in contrast to Facebook, is not a global company. It is solely based on China and just a few other neighboring countries. However, it has multiple revenue streams. It is not just focused on ad revenue, just like Facebook. It's focused on gaming. It likes to pronounce itself as a gaming company that not only has a strong gaming ecosystem, but also connects other services like payments and food delivery, home delivery. It brings everything together. So if you have an account in WeChat, you basically have access to everything in China. However, in contrast to Facebook, this company has a very high innovation rate. It can churn out products in less than 2 months, and that is something that gives it the edge over Facebook. For example, for the same service, that Facebook released in 2016, Tencent released the same service 15 months earlier. So that is where they have a strong edge. And in terms of opportunities, we see that IoT and big data, these are things that Tencent are already investing in and are things that they can focus on in the future. Now, the challenges of Facebook. We understand that if you have limited functionality, you can be vulnerable in the future. Think about MySpace. It was pretty popular, but what happened? Facebook came and it took its market entirely, and MySpace is practically non-existent right now. Now, from our point of view, we can see that Facebook has 3.2 billion active users, and it's a huge company. It just can't go away like that. However, considering its limited functionality, and if you compare it to its competitor in Tencent, it has a wide array of services that can overtake Facebook in the future. So that is definitely a problem in the global arena. So problem number one, growing concerns over privacy, and because of its high dependence or sole dependence on ad revenue, this concern over privacy can hamper its revenues in the future. And secondly, the slow innovation, where you are bringing out the same products, but you don't have the competitive edge because your competitor is already doing that 6 months ahead of you. So you're no longer the key market mover. If we take a look at the challenges of Tencent, we see that Facebook's strong presence means that it might be too late for them. Why? And why is that? They don't have, for example, if you ask about Facebook, people will say it's a social media site in one word. But what is Tencent? It's not a social media site. It's a combination of everything. So it's focusing on too many things at the same time. Based on its core competency of having WeChat, it's also focusing on new cars and other technologies. So this might be a huge concern in the future because it might lose focus and not end up being sure of what it wants to actually achieve in 5 years' time, say.
Okay. So our main strategy for Facebook is to rectify, to protect. Now, what we want to do with Facebook is we know it has a strong global presence. We know it is well positioned to do well in the market, but we need to make sure it doesn't lose its edge. So our strategy is mainly to accelerate, through which we speed up our innovation process, so we bring out products faster than our competitors do. Enhance. We want to connect to people better, improve the way people connect, and add those new features that will bring them more strongly into Facebook. And finally, diversify. We want to add some new streams of revenue for Facebook so that we're not solely dependent on ad revenue. So we come to the first part of our solution here. Now, accelerate innovation. What do we mean by accelerate innovation? We need to change the processes inside Facebook that control the innovative process. And on that end, we've suggested 3 solutions to you. Our first solution is collaborative engineering. Now, according to the case, we've seen how the Chinese government, in fact, it is pro-Tencent. The Chinese government will do things to enable rules that make Tencent better compete. Now, since our governments or the US governments are not as collaborative, what Facebook can do is collaborate with other global companies which can't gain access in China either. And they can pool their technologies together so that they can compete together against all of WeChat's features. That's collaborative engineering. Our second idea is barrier-free innovation. We want to change the innovation process inside Facebook. We don't want the innovation process to be step by step and with different teams handling different things altogether differently, but rather we want to have no procedural gap, so that there's no gap between idea generation, product development, marketing, and testing new innovations, so that the entire product is rolled out much faster and is implemented much faster. And on that end, we want to implement A/B testing, trial and error efforts over actual market research. Since we already have a huge base of consumers, what we can do is we can test our new products on small bases in different areas, and we see what the response is. We take feedback, and that's how we roll out our products. So instead of researching a product for a long period of time, we actually test it out, we get feedback, and we roll out the best version of a product as fast as possible. The next step of our solution is to enhance connectivity. Now on that end, what we want to exploit is the commerce potential of Facebook. Now a lot of restaurants and a lot of free entrepreneurs these days will have a Facebook page, they will interact with people on their Facebook pages. Now this presents a unique opportunity. Instead of just seeing what offers are available on these Facebook pages, what if they could actually pay for the service, pay for the delivery, or pay for what they want from these Facebook pages directly? And on that end, we want to really exploit the e-commerce potential by creating a payment system through Facebook, through which they can access these restaurants, they can access these shops, and these independent entrepreneurs can sell their products directly to their customers without the need of a manual payment system or a pay-by-delivery system. And another interesting fact is that Facebook searches yield about 2 billion searches every year, compared to every day, compared to Google, which is 3.5 billion searches every day. And those figures are strikingly near. So what we can do is we can improve the Facebook search algorithm and we can link it to e-commerce. So when you're looking for a product, you can directly search for the product and find those options available through your Facebook search. So Facebook essentially becomes like an e-commerce hub where things that people sell on Facebook appear directly when you look for that particular item, and you can pay for it directly through the Facebook search. And we feel that this will enhance people using Facebook. It will help people use Facebook in a different way to directly pay and search for things they want. Now, our other idea to make Facebook more interactive is to implement VR into Facebook Live. Now, Facebook has already bought Oculus Rift. They are investing in the VR segment. And what we want to do with that is, if we implement Facebook into Facebook Live, you can be with a person, or we can be directly connected to a person or a place through that VR. And this can be used for live shows, it can be used for concerts, it can be used for greater connectivity to live events, even if you're far away. And besides that, Facebook can integrate other forms of social media features, like Facebook games, Facebook stories, which already exists. And as if you may know, Facebook Messenger recently integrated games into the application, and these games are so interactive and so compelling that you will end up spending a lot of time inside the application. And that's the aim for Facebook, essentially, to make people spend more and more time inside their applications. And Facebook dating could also be another avenue they can explore to get more connectivity among people. Moving on. And lastly, to diversify, our main idea for diversifying, we want to link our diversification efforts into what Facebook already does. On that end, we want to acquire gaming companies that focus on mobile gaming platforms. Since people usually engage or use Facebook through their phones, we want to buy mobile gaming platforms so that we can roll out better games for Facebook itself. We can roll out games separately in the Play Store, and this will just add an additional source of revenue. And besides that, our e-commerce efforts for Facebook Pay, I forgot to mention the name before, will obviously add another commission revenue stream for Facebook.
Now, so when reading the case, we found a lot of problems with Facebook, but when it came to Tencent, we were like, this is the perfect company. What could possibly be wrong with this company? And why are they even concerned with Facebook? Because they were doing everything. They had a chat, they had a payment platform, they were investing in self-driven cars, they were all over the place. So, and after reading the case, we realized that that's the problem. They're doing everything. They're not focusing on a particular core competency or a USP. They are doing everything. So what we thought was they lacked focus. So one of the first strategies that we suggest for Tencent is to prioritize. You should prioritize on the services that matter the most to you, that contribute most to your revenue, and the ones that will contribute most to your future growth. And then you can leverage these to finally globalize your company. Since your main revenue source is only limited to China and your main users are Chinese. So by prioritizing at the right places, you can finally globalize and become a global company. So moving on to the prioritization part, we thought of two areas to prioritizing. First of all, Tencent thinks of itself as a gaming company. They have acquired gaming companies such as Riot and Supercell. Riot is the owner of the famous game called League of Legends, which has 22 million active players on a monthly basis. And they also have Supercell, which is also the parent company of one of the leading mobile games called Clash of Clans. So by doing this,
you're creating your revenue sources by focusing heavily on gaming for both mobile and PC, as you're currently doing. And by further incorporating AR and VR features, you're also building for the future, because by 2020, the VR and AR market is, the revenue of the AR and VR market is projected to be 120 billion US dollars, which is huge. And you can do this by developing your own games through your acquired companies, or you can acquire more companies, such as Blizzard, which has other famous games. And the next we want to focus on is the WeChat payment platform. Currently, the WeChat payment platform has more than 10 currencies on their list, including the US dollar and, of course, the Chinese currency, renminbi. So what you can do is you can incorporate your platform into other apps. For example, why only make payments through the WeChat app? What if I want to call an Uber, or I want to Food Panda? So what if I can pay through my WeChat platform? And in addition, we should also focus on adding more vendor partners, where users can actually use the WeChat payment platform to make payments in stores. So, and using these, we will globalize. As I mentioned before, the single game called League of Legends has 22 million players all over the world, including Europe and USA. So they number in millions, and this is a good way to gain foothold into the other markets where you don't have a presence, such as the EU and the US market, and even parts of Asia Pacific. So you can gain a major foothold in major economies. And since these games have these are freemium games, so you can play the game for free, but when you want upgrades and you want to buy other things, so you actually have to pay. So you can, again, you can incorporate your payment platform into this to make the payments, increasing your customer base. And finally, chat apps are becoming very popular for gamers. So you can again have a separate version of WeChat for the gamers. And finally, since you're going to increase your payment platform to other apps and other vendors, you can specifically target Chinese tourists to other countries. For example, the leading number of tourists in the US are Chinese tourists. So it's a compelling reason for the vendors to adopt your technology.
Okay, to conclude the final segment of the presentation, I'll be discussing the risks and mitigations. For the major risks we think Facebook will be facing is that, incorporating accelerated innovation into their company. Right now, they're taking a long time to roll out their new products and develop new products. But if you want to incorporate that technology, it will be very time-consuming, because we'll have to change the corporate culture. We believe that restructuring the organization, which will be both very time-consuming. But however, it will actually allow Facebook to gain an overall long-term competitive edge through innovating. And secondly, one of the other problems is that as commerce through Facebook is growing, but it could still have more time to convince more people to come in order to make it like a major platform such as Amazon. So we believe that if we provide cash as well as non-cash incentives for entrepreneurs to sell their products on Facebook via F-commerce, we believe that that'll actually help to increase the adoption rate of Facebook commerce. And we believe the major risk for Tencent will be that since now we're advising them to focus on payment as well as gaming, they might end up losing their foothold in other grounds, which could have eventually given them a long-term competitive edge. So this would be like a short-term versus long-term focused dilemma. But however, the mitigation could be they could continue to invest in research and development to ensure that they have their investment in disruptive technology for the futures. Well, we have made the following projections according to our goals. We believe that the following financials will be possible throughout our strategies. As of now, the ad revenue consists of 97% of Facebook's revenue. But we believe that throughout our strategies, we will be able to decrease that to 63% in 5 years. And currently, Facebook needs 6 to 12 months to innovate a new product. But through adopting the new culture as well as the new innovation system, we can decrease this time to 2 to 4 months. Now, for Tencent, the revenue is currently 10.21 billion, but we believe that this high level of focus in the gaming industry will allow them to approximately have around $13 to $15 billion of revenue. And the global coverage of Tencent, we believe our strategy would allow them to expand from the current operations to gaming in 80 countries as well as payment systems in 25 countries. To sum up the presentation, we believe that Facebook will be able to survive as well as the threat of losing out in the long run through diversifying other segments, as well as Tencent will be able to survive in the long run by focusing on their core competencies as well as moving their focus out of China into other countries. With that, we would like to end our presentation. Thank you.
There will now be a 15-minute Q&A session.
Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Very good presentation. I see a lot of strategy proposed per se for both Tencent and Facebook. I would be interested to know for Facebook, what would be your priority in terms of the number of strategy you mentioned, and what would you consider?
Our priority would be the F-commerce section, because we feel it's very up and coming, and the revenue stream from this is very high, say, as opposed to gaming. Gaming would be a very small percentage of our revenue, but F-commerce is a very up and coming business, and a lot of businesses actually do engage their customers through these commerce websites. Even in our country, we have friends who actually run businesses through Facebook pages, and the payment system, it varies from people to people. Some people deliver the money, some people
Cash on delivery.
yeah, it's essentially cash on delivery, but it would be much better. It would be a much better system if there was a payment system instilled right into Facebook. And like our friends, there are hundreds of entrepreneurs just within our country who use Facebook as a medium for selling or buying. And restaurants do engage people primarily through their Facebook pages. So I would say that F-commerce would be our greatest priority in terms of diversifying our revenue stream and finding a new way for people to interact.
So you've mentioned you want to decrease the portion of the ad revenue, again on Facebook, from
Yes, sir.
97 to 63. So what's the other 37%? So you're mentioning e-commerce. How do you see the split with the other revenue streams?
F-commerce would probably be around 30% of the new stream, and gaming would be around 7%, or even less than that.
Okay. Can I just follow a question on this? So you think you're going to have 30% basically coming from F-commerce. The current revenue for Facebook is like 3 billion. That's 1 billion worth of revenue. How do you achieve that? So how do you monetize the F-commerce, and what's the fee structure on the F-commerce?
Firstly, as mentioned, like in order to encourage more people to sell via Facebook, we believe that providing, for example, like ad credit, right? Like normally for Facebook, if you want to advertise on Facebook, you'll have to like pay them via dollars. But if you give them like an incentive, like if you start selling your products on Facebook, we'll give you like $1,000 or $2,000 promotional ad credit, so you can not only sell via our platform, as well as you'll get like a bonus to promote your products. And as more people, especially in emerging countries, are adopting Facebook, it's actually becoming a very popular channel, especially in Bangladesh. Like a lot of people that don't know how to make their own websites as well as integrate into platform, but however they're very they're opening up their own groups and opening up their own pages. So we believe that this is a very important trend, especially for the emerging economies, to adopt the F-commerce.
I had 2 questions. You talked about restructuring Facebook. Do you have more details? The reason being, it's already in Silicon Valley, which is the most creative place in the world. It's already an innovative company, so restructuring an old company is hard. Restructuring innovative, any more details?
You mentioned about it being in Silicon Valley, and that is a good thing, essentially. But in this case, that is actually the bad thing, being in Silicon Valley. Because if you're in Silicon Valley, it's a common thing in Silicon Valley. It's slower than the Chinese businesses. The Chinese startups can roll out a product in less than a year, in less than 6 months, and even in 2.5 months. With Silicon Valley companies cannot do. The reason was not specified there, but it was mentioned that the Chinese startups do have continuous innovation processes for which it is possible, and this is something that Silicon Valley companies lack, and that is where the restructuring comes in. We want the collaborative engineering. We want them to go away from the sequential development of a product to work on the collaborative engineering of a product simultaneously, adopting what the Chinese competitors do.
So it's also mentioned in the case that for a while Facebook didn't come up with many innovative products, and we could see like a very recent example. Like, Facebook eventually tried to buy Snapchat, but when they couldn't, they ended up literally copying every single feature of Snapchat. So this shows how desperate Facebook is to eventually make new features and buy new companies. As of now, they're going through acquisition, and it's probably because they're not able to come up with innovative products. Previously, they did try to come up with products that were similar to Snapchat, but that didn't grow well. So this kind of shows that Facebook is not being able to have some kind of internal innovation. And as Japanese traditional techniques such as Kaizen is being very popular in many organizations, we believe that this method used by Chinese companies could actually help Facebook to stand out even among the Silicon Valley companies. So they could not just be like an American tech business that's innovating at their pace. They could actually eventually catch up to the innovation pace of Tencent.
What's wrong with copying? At the end of the day, it's still a business. Is it pride that doesn't want people to copy, or is it just Apple didn't actually invent the phone, just made it better for it, and he copied everything.
Well,
He's made everything better.
So I think a couple of months back, Facebook introduced the Stories feature to their interface. So I have a lot of friends who use Facebook religiously. So there are when they copied the feature from Snapchat, people were actually like, no, I don't want to use this app anymore. They're just ripping off other stuff. So this actually created a negative impression. And if this continues in the long run, there might be a global how do I put it? A global ban against Facebook that I won't use it because it's a copycat product and it's not
think
innovative.
that I knew that and that wouldn't stop me using Facebook?
Well, if you're a very ardent Snapchat user, you would be taken back by
the
something.
Stories was the
How does Snapchat use it?
You might not be. It's mostly among the young people, but like Stories was something Snapchat was known about. So when you realize that Facebook is also trying to do that, we see like it's kind of losing its identity. What it actually wants to be.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
How do you? I mean, you say you're losing identity and you're using all your personal examples, but you're a young, smart guys. What about the rest of the world?
So if I may summarize
Because
what
about
they
my
said.
generation.
Yes, sir. So when a new product comes in with a new feature, everyone drives to that. So for example, only Snapchat had the Stories option before, and no other company did. So what people did, all of them were Snapchat users, and they used Snapchat for Stories. So when Facebook came, they were like, why now shift to Facebook for Stories? We already have Snapchat. They already have friends on Snapchat. They have there's a point system on Snapchat. They already have those. So moving to Facebook is like an added burden for them. Switching between apps. So if you can come up with a new technology first, you can have the first mover advantage and attract the users first, and instead of being a copycat feature. And if I may add to the copycat feature, WeChat did incorporate a lot of features, but it mainly flourished because it incorporated everything and not just a few features. So that is why the first mover advantage is very important for apps.
Also, the Facebook Messenger stories as well as stories are not doing really well. People are not really adopting to it, so it's probably like.
True, but Snapchat's never going to make any money in its history, so. Just changing the. Sorry. Just one more. You talked about prioritizing the gaming in Tencent, and you said there's 22 million people, but you said they're playing for free. One thing about expansion is making money. How do you convert those people to make money?
So statistically,
Because from my, a lot of good points that you guys are bringing up, but effectively it comes back to getting it all for free. And there's a column, these guys make $10, $11 billion and they make a margin of about 30%. At the end of the day, everything has to be monetized. So I thought you had a good point, but I didn't think you took it far enough.
so if I may elaborate.
Sure.
So they have 22 million active users. But statistically, I can't state the exact figure, but 4 to 5 million of those users are paying users. So these gaming companies are very interactive. Their games are very addictive. So at the end of the day, if you play for 3 or 4 days for free, you eventually want to unlock that next level and you want to pay. So for $2-3, you're getting a new value, and the number of paying users is perhaps less than 20% of the actual users. But compared to other games, this is actually very significant, because if you consider the games in WeChat, there are only 5 to 10% people who are actually paying for it in the long run. So if you acquire these companies, acquire these big companies, you can actually get those revenues from the gaming
Because
platforms.
these games are so popular that there are like large tournaments, including international participants, where they come from all over the world to participate in League of Legends tournaments. So, and also many of these games have like paid upgrades. For example, you just pay half of it, you realize there's a new version of it. So this is actually increasing. There's a scope to create revenue out of this, and this is also something that Tencent has a core competency in it. So like they have a core competency in payment, has a core competency in gaming. So we thought like these are the two key drivers it should focus on in the other markets.
Do you think doing that's going to get someone like me or the three of us to be customers?
No.
Can I move to a different type of question? The case talks, and you mentioned a bit about regulation and the way the regulation in China has been accommodating to Tencent and has been instrumental in the success. Moving forward with the election of Trump in the US, with again the difficulty that Facebook has to enter the Chinese market, how do you see the impact of regulation globally in those key markets and other markets impacting the strategy you've set up for both companies?
The strategy set up for Tencent?
For both, so
okay.
which one would be more impacted by the weight of regulation moving forward in your strategy, and how and why?
Okay, so the way Trump is going, it seems like Tencent is likely to be more affected by the strategies set, because they'll be the ones trying to come into the US, and Facebook being a US company will likely be supported by Trump. So, and the strategies even taken for them are unlikely to be affected by any trade barriers that the US imposes. They're already being affected by the firewall that's put up by China by not being able to have Facebook in China, but that's already a given. So what how Tencent can likely be affected is Trump imposing similar bans for Tencent in the US. And that is why we have been prioritizing on the gaming sector, because that is something that's already been established, and that is something not likely to be put around a firewall, because the US already has millions of players of the different games.
Like ban a game.
If I may add to that, the main concern whenever you're talking about social media is privacy, and we feel that gaming is not an area where privacy would be a concern in the US. So maybe there wouldn't be a barrier on gaming, but there would definitely be a barrier around WeChat, since WeChat would share private information within the US.
I'm actually seeing one of your conclusions would be globalizing Tencent, and the plan for 3 to 5 years appear to be quite aggressive in moving into 80 countries. Yeah.
Well,
what would you think it would have to be done within Tencent to practically apply that strategy?
Well, one of the good things regarding the coverage is that Tencent bought a lot of companies that are already operating in this market. So we would say that maybe they're already in around 40 to 50 markets. So maybe that it doesn't seem that aggressive, provided that these companies are already established companies who are well established in these industries. So maybe just moving to a fewer markets would help us to achieve these targets.
And as the current strategy stands, then this company is not exactly going from one market to the other. It's actually selecting companies that are already in the different markets and then using them to promote the product. So that way we feel that yes, it's not 0 to 80, it's actually, let's say 40 to 50 to 60, something like that. So
what would be the 3 key factors that Tencent would have to consider in pursuing this strategy?
Since these are games, the first consideration will be the popularity of the game. So if you want to expand into new countries, there would have to be the popularity for the game. For example, there are a lot of popular games which are played in US and maybe the North America, but not in Asia. But the games that Tencent has, these are played all over the world. So popularity is one factor when you're considering moving into new markets. That's one of them. And the other would be the cost of the games. For example, the games Tencent has, these are mostly free games. So when you move into new markets, the players are going to adapt these games because they don't need any money to start playing these games. They can just go to the website, download it for free, and start playing. It's just that easy. But there are other games that require the payment to be made at first. For example, we play this other game by one of their rival companies called Blizzard. It first requires payment to be made, and then you can play the game. So comparatively, it has less players, only 10 million compared to the 22 million that Riot has. So those are two of the things.
And the third would be convenience, because even now, if you want to pay for, let's say, an upgrade, you still have to go through a rigorous process. But by incorporating, let's say, the UChat finance option here, we can make this more convenient for the users as well. And apart from the game, we're also giving them a better experience overall, considering the logistics in terms of paying for the.
Also, I believe that if we jump into the bandwagon of virtual reality, it will help to provide more value to the users as well as give them like new reasons to buy and adopt these games. Like so before that, it was probably just a 2D experience. Now you get to feel and get a better overall feeling of the game. So we believe that also these emerging technologies will help to popularize the games of Tencent.
So I think thank you for the comments, and I think the focus on the games is pretty good cover. But in terms of our company,
Sorry, the time is actually just gone up, so I don't think there's any time for more questions.
that's fine. I was just trying to
Okay. All right then. Thank you so much
Thank
to
you.
the University of
Thank you so
Dhaka for
much.
their presentations.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.